Have you ever apologized for something that was never your fault, just to keep the peace? If you have, you already know what it feels like to shrink yourself down so someone else could feel bigger. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you're going to understand something that changes everything about how you see what happened to you, and more importantly, what happens next. There is a moment that almost everyone who has loved a narcissist remembers. It is small. It is quiet. It might be a look, a sentence, a silence that lasted 1 second too long. And in that moment, something inside you learned to go still. You learned to read a room before you even walked into it. You learned to measure your own voice before you used it. Nobody teaches you that. You teach it to yourself, one flinch at a time, because somewhere along the way, peace became more important than truth. That is not weakness. That is survival. And survival, even the quiet kind, is a form of strength that most people will never understand, because most people have never needed it. But here's what most people never realize. The real torture was never something you had to plan or plot. It happened without you even trying. Because the moment you stopped needing their approval, the moment your hands stopped shaking every time they raised their voice, the moment you looked at them without flinching, something in them broke that no manipulation could fix. You didn't destroy them. You simply stopped feeding the thing that needed you small. If these words feel like they were written just for you, if you are somewhere in the middle of untangling yourself from someone who made you question your own mind, this space was made for people exactly like you. Consider staying close by subscribing, because what we build here together is bigger than one video. Let's talk about the first way, and it is the one nobody expects: silence. Not the cold, punishing silence they used against you, a different kind. The silence of no longer explaining yourself. Narcissists feed on your reactions the way a fire feeds on air. Every time you defended yourself, every time you cried and asked why, every time you begged them to just see you, you were handing them proof that they still had control. The moment you stop giving explanations, the moment you let your own peace speak louder than their provocations, you take away the one thing they built their entire identity around: being the center of your world. This is where everything starts to change, because silence like that is not avoidance. It is not weakness dressed up as calm. It is the loudest thing you can do to someone who needs your chaos to feel powerful. When you stop reacting, you stop performing the role they wrote for you. And a narcissist without an audience is a narcissist without a stage. The second way is even harder, and it might be the one that stings the most to hear. Healing. Not the performative kind you post about, the real kind, the kind that happens in private, at 3 a.m, when you finally let yourself grieve the person you thought they were. Because here is a truth almost no one says out loud. You are not just mourning a relationship, you are mourning a version of them that never actually existed. The one who loved you in the beginning, who made you feel like the only person in the room. That person was a mask, worn just long enough to pull you in. Grieving someone who is still alive, someone who might still be in your life, is one of the strangest kinds of pain there is. It does not look like other grief. There is no funeral, no permission from the world to fall apart. You are expected to keep functioning, keep smiling, keep showing up, while quietly burying a version of a person that only ever lived in your hope. And when you finally let that grief move through you instead of around you, when you stop trying to rush it or hide it, that is when real healing begins. And healing, real healing, is something a narcissist can never take credit for, control, or manipulate. It belongs entirely to you. The truth goes much deeper than that. Healing threatens them in a way almost nothing else does, because as long as you were broken, you needed them, even if only in your own mind, to explain the wreckage. But a whole version of you, a version who laughs again, who trusts their own judgment again, who no longer needs an explanation for what happened, that version does not need them at all. And there is nothing more unbearable to someone who thrives on being needed than being irrelevant. If you are somewhere in this process right now, if some days feel like progress and other days feel like you are back at square one, I want you to hear this clearly. Healing is not linear, and that does not mean you are doing it wrong. It means you are doing it honestly. The third way is one that took me a long time to understand myself. Boundaries. Real ones. Not the kind you announce and then quietly abandon the first time they cry or apologize or promise it will be different. The kind you protect even when it is uncomfortable, even when it makes you feel like the bad guy, even when everyone around you says you are being too much. Narcissists do not fear anger. Anger is familiar to them. It is chaos they know how to use. What they fear is a calm, immovable no that does not need to explain itself twice. Here's the part that changes everything. A boundary is not a punishment. It is not revenge. It is simply the truth of what you will and will not allow near your peace. And when you hold that truth steady, without guilt, without over-explaining, without shrinking under pressure, you take away their favorite tool, your doubt. Because for so long, your doubt was the door they walked through every single time. Close that door, and there is nowhere left for them to go. This next part is something almost no one talks about. The fourth way is thriving, visibly and unapologetically, not to prove anything to them, but because you finally can. There is a strange myth that healing should be quiet, humble, almost invisible, as if being happy after everything you survived is somehow disrespectful to the pain. That is not true. Your joy is not an insult to what happened. Your joy is proof that it did not win. When you build a life that feels like yours, when you laugh freely again, when you fall in love with your own company, when you chase something that has nothing to do with them, you are not performing for an audience. You are simply living. But to someone who once controlled your emotional weather, watching you thrive without their permission is unbearable. Not because they miss you, because they miss the version of themselves that felt powerful next to your pain. What happens next will surprise you. The fifth way is the quietest and maybe the most powerful of all. Forgiveness. Not for them, for you. This is not about excusing what they did or pretending it did not leave marks. This is about releasing the weight of carrying their actions inside your own body every single day. Resentment feels like protection, but it is often just another leash, quietly tying you to the very person you are trying to walk away from. Forgiveness, the kind that sets you free, does not require their apology. It does not require them to understand what they did. It does not even require them to know it happened. It is a private decision you make for your own nervous system, your own future, your own ability to love again without flinching. When you release the grip of what happened, you are not letting them off the hook. You are simply refusing to let their actions define one more day of your life. And this is where the story turns. Because none of these 5 things were ever really about revenge. They were never a plan to hurt someone else. They were a path back to yourself. The silence that starves them was really about learning to trust your own stillness. The healing that unsettles them was really about learning to sit with your own pain without running from it. The boundaries that confused them were really about learning your own worth well enough to protect it. The joy that haunts them was really about remembering who you were before you learned to be small. And the forgiveness that frees you was never about them at all. Their worth was never determined by how that person treated them, and neither is yours. What was done to you was never your fault, no matter what you were made to believe in the quiet moments when you were told otherwise. The same sensitivity that made you a target, the same empathy, the same willingness to see the good in people, is the exact same quality that will one day make you powerful, once it is pointed in the right direction, protected by boundaries, guided by wisdom you did not have before. If you have made it this far, I want you to know something. You are not the person they told you that you were. You were never too much, and you were never not enough. You were simply too honest for someone who lived behind a mask, too loving for someone who could not receive it, too whole for someone who needed you broken to feel complete. Your future is not a continuation of your past. It is a new chapter, and for the first time, you are the one holding the pen. Every day you choose peace over chaos. Every day you choose truth over performance. Every day you choose yourself without apology. You are writing a story that has nothing to do with who hurt you, and everything to do with who you are becoming. If this reached something in you tonight, If some part of your story lived inside these words, stay a little longer in this space. Subscribe, not because this channel needs another number, but because healing is easier when you do not do it alone. There are others out here, walking the same road, learning the same lessons, becoming the same kind of unshakable. You survived something that tried to convince you that you were the problem. You survived something that tried to rewrite your memory, your worth, your voice. And you are still here, still soft enough to love, still strong enough to walk away, still whole enough to build something beautiful out of what almost broke you. That is not an accident. That is not luck. That is the quiet, undeniable proof that you were always stronger than what happened to you. And no one, not the version of them that hurt you, not the doubt that still visits sometimes, not the past you are slowly setting down, gets to write the next chapter of your life. Only you do. So write it well. You have already survived the hardest part.